And welcome to Let's Talk with Matt and Johnny. In Season 2, we're inviting inspiring guests onto our show to talk about their current journey. And this one's for the sports fans out there, as we talk about stress and pressure in professional sports with London Irish back row, Matt Rogerson. Matt is very open and honest about his highs and lows in his 6 years as a professional rugby player. Matt goes into how COVID-19 has affected the mindset of players and how he has to adjust to the new procedures in place, as well as how injuries can be detrimental to a player's mindset and focus. So if you're a sports fan, this is a great listen from start to finish. So please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and we hope you enjoy.
Hello guys, welcome back to Let's Talk with Matt and Johnny. Today we've got London Irish rugby player Matt Rogerson joining us today. Hello mate, how are we doing?
Hi, very well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Thanks so much again for coming on, mate. We do really appreciate it. Before we start, I just want you to dive in and just introduce yourself really. And then we're going to exploit your career, your personal training business that you've set up on the side whilst playing for Irish. And yeah, we go from there. So Mate, how are you? Captain
Cool.
Yesterday?
Put me on the spot. Yeah, like you say, yeah. So yeah, I'm a London Irish rugby player. Been playing pro rugby now pretty much straight out of university. So how are we now? 6 years down the line in the pro rugby game. So and yeah, London Irish is a club I've been at now for the past 3 years. This is going into my third season next season. Like you say, just mentioned there, obviously I had the pleasure of captaining the side yesterday for the first time in the Premiership, which was a big honour for me and something I really didn't take lightly. I tried my very best to put my best sort of captain hat on and try to lead the lads. Unfortunately, didn't get the result we wanted, but it was good. Really encouraging to see a lot of young guys go out there. So that's sort of kind of me in a nutshell. Like you say, professional rugby is a big part of my life. It's my job day to day. It ties in really well, obviously, with the personal training that I've decided to sort of pursue on the side. Obviously, an area that you're a specialist in yourself. So I'm sort of learning the ropes in all aspects of life at the moment. I continue to try and learn and develop in the rugby side of things, and now personal training is also another area where, by no means, just because sport is my job and fitness is my job, I'm not a finished product there. I'm always looking to learn and improve. So great to kind of see what you guys are out there doing and learn as much as I can along the way too.
Yeah, good mate, good. And for me, it's even going back before, obviously, like you say, you were playing rugby in your uni days and stuff. Is this always been like a lifelong dream to play professional rugby from literally from a youngster? Were you thinking that's my goal? I want to be playing, captaining a side in the Premier League, in the Premiership for rugby. That's a pretty big deal, mate. It's being a kid, looking up to yourself in the future and thinking I'm going to be a captain for a side in a Premiership team. That's pretty decent.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's something that to achieve that I'm very proud of, and I suppose it would be the sort of fairy tale thing to go, like from when I was kind of as soon as I could walk, I picked up a rugby ball.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. A lot of people that you'll probably come across in pro sport are like that. For me, it was a stranger journey, and it wasn't really like that at all. I think growing up, I was very much like a multi-sports type kid, as I always encourage a lot of kids who I come across to be, because I think the skill set and the disciplines that you learn across the different sports are crucial for not only kind of your social skills you develop, people you meet along the way, but also your hand-eye coordination and the skills you pick up in all of those different disciplines. So growing up, I was into football, I was into golf. I dabbled a bit in rugby more by force than anything, because when I went to high school, my school was quite a big rugby school. So you play obviously in your PE lessons, you get in the school teams, you play into school games. And to be honest, it wasn't something that I probably really picked up seriously until I probably started to develop a bit more physically. Maybe when I hit the age of sort of 15, 16, 17, bit of a growth spurt, start filling out a bit. And I suppose at that point, a collision sport and a contact sport like rugby becomes a bit easier when you get those physical gains. Probably wasn't until I was probably like 15, 16 that I actually went and joined my local club. I then started sort of working my way through the county levels, and you kind of get development squads that kind of pick up young lads who sort of potentially could make it kind of further in higher up the leagues and into potentially the pro game. So I guess I sort of got on that track, and things started to go well for me. Sort of, I got into my late teens, which led me to go to Loughborough Uni, which obviously is a massive sports uni, probably the best rugby team in terms of the country, in terms of at a student level. So I sort of just went from challenge to challenge. From there, I went to uni fully for the uni experience, like not solely for the sport. Obviously, I wanted to go meet new people. I met my now fiance there. So there's all that kind of thing that goes on around it, which is why I went. But to then, naturally, rugby was a big part of my life up until that point, especially in the recent years leading up to then. So yeah, to get into the first team there was a big thing, and to play regularly at a high standard, that eventually propelled me into the professional game. And although it was always kind of a quiet aim, obviously, because I was there to have my degree, and to potentially just do what anyone does, go get a degree, get a grad job, get a career. That was kind of always something that was similar along the way as well, and was important probably for me to have that education as well as doing the rugby. You can't just put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of, it unfolded that rugby turned out the right way, and I got a professional contract, and I've luckily sort of gone, although a few bumps along the way, I've got near enough strength from there and managed to stay in the game, because unfortunately, like with any professional sport, whether it's through injury or through selection issues, you can get spat out the other side quite easily, as you hear a lot. So yeah, I think obviously I've just kind of built my way up to this point now where I sort of feel pretty confident and comfortable in the position I'm in. I enjoy the team, the environment I'm playing in. And yeah, that's kind of, obviously, like I say, a very proud moment for me to captain the side yesterday and to be playing regularly for such a big and prestigious club in the rugby world. Like, it probably wasn't always the number one plan, but obviously I'm really, really pleased it's turned out that way. Certainly in recent years, as I've become more and more serious and been in the game longer, it's obviously become an ambition, and then naturally the goalposts move, and you go from wanting to just be a Premiership player to kind of be an international player, and the goalposts move, and you try and progress. So obviously, yeah, in recent years, definitely has been the aim to get to where I am today, but now we kick on, and I try push it even further if I can as well. So that's the aim.
Matt, just out of interest, first of all, yeah, great to have you on, mate. I'm really interested, and I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners will probably be interested as well. Now, I watch a lot of rugby. The physical regime and training you have to go through. Can you just give us a little bit of an insight as to what a standard week would look for you from a training perspective, and what you have to do? Because I think it'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, 100%. It's actually a question I get asked a lot, because obviously, I guess unless you actually do it, there's no other real, or you ask someone about it, there's no real other way that you sort of be exposed to it or be aware of kind of what actually goes on. So, I mean, as a standard training week, ignoring kind of what the schedule's like at the moment, because obviously COVID's kind of messed it all up, but on a normal training week and a normal season, all our games are basically over a weekend period. So we play across Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Either a Friday night game, Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon. So presuming we play on a Saturday, we basically take Sunday as kind of our recovery protocol. So within that, sometimes that's done with the clubs, so with the S&C staff there. So that'll be active recovery, which can be ice baths in the pool, mobility sessions, massage, all the soft tissue that's kind of needed to try and get your body back in one piece again. We then come in on Monday. We have our gym session, and our weights are done early in the morning, so we get that out of the way. We then go into usually meetings, which is reviewing the previous game and also previewing the up-and-coming game. So obviously we look at the tactical elements of what went right, what went wrong, previous games, and what to expect from the team who we're going to play the following week. We'll then go out on pitch and kind of do quite a lower level, sort of not high intensity at all, kind of walk through our plays for the coming week and walk through some of the things that we want to try and achieve out of that week. Again, it's because we're only sort of 48 hours from the game at that point, that's quite low level. And if we push boys too far at that point, that's where you start picking up soft tissue stuff. And you kind of, it's detrimental really to push that too far. Tuesday's then our big work day. So when I say big work day, it's sort of like a very similar layout to how Monday was that I just described, but you kind of up the intensity and up the ante a bit. So obviously we can't go full contact whacking each other all the time, because otherwise we just wouldn't go into games fresh. But Tuesday is probably our one opportunity where we're far enough from the previous game, but also still far enough from the upcoming game where we can add a bit of that contact element. We can sort of go bone on bone, as we call it, and get a bit of contact in the system. So as a forward like myself, that can involve defending mauls, rucking practice, doing live tackle, and again, that's just all to prep ourselves physically for the weekend. Usually midweeks then off, so Wednesday, again, that's active recovery, get any sort of soft tissue stuff you need to get ready for Thursday, Friday, which is much sort of teetered down in terms of intensity. So we go back to kind of lower level, running through plays, refining what we want to do in terms of the game coming forward. Friday is really short. Captains run through the plays again, and then we're into the game. So, and it's very much rinse repeat for kind of, sounds a lot, but pretty much like 35 to 40 weeks of the year that we do that.
That does sound like a lot. It sounds intense, exactly. But obviously you've got to do it, right? Because otherwise you'd be where you are today.
Yeah, 100%. And I think obviously like we have the benefit of the fact that it is, I say full-time athletes loosely because that makes it sound like we're in the Olympics or something. But the fact that we are obviously kind of like full-time professionals, we are able to dedicate all of our time to preparing ourselves appropriately to be able to perform at this level in those sessions. So obviously, I suppose if you chuck your average person into that who also had to juggle another job, or I mean, even if you add other life stresses, whether it's kids or it's anything else into the equation, then obviously it then becomes difficult to stay fully on top of kind of the nutrition and all the things outside of it that actually help you perform at the required level and be able to turn up to training every day and actually be physically in shape. I think, although it does sound very intense, and a lot of people do say, like, how do you just back that up every week? The body is pretty amazing, actually, how much you can adapt to the training effect once you actually repeat it a few times. And obviously, we all come in pre-season and we're kind of like knackered after the first few weeks because you've had kind of the off season off. But that pre-season block that we have before the season starts, the load really, really does go up week on week on week. It gets to the point where by the time it drops off a bit for the season and we get into games, our bodies are kind of already prepped for what's to come. But physically, you push yourself mentally as well because there's so much fitness, especially in the heat, and it's hard work. So yeah, but I always do find it amazing. Sometimes you come in and you feel, wow, this is going to hit me hard this year. Every year you come back a year older, and a year full of knocks and injuries that you think of along the way. But yeah, the body adapts pretty well, usually, touch wood. And it's you just kind of got to keep backing up. Some days, I mean, we do, it sounds like a horror story sometimes, but we do literally get wheeled out. You kind of held together by strapping sometimes, but kind of, if you've got that desire to play and the will to play, which you want to do, you want to play, you want to perform, you want to do a job. There's obviously internal competition going on between players within the squad to get places in that team as well. So not only are you wanting to play to beat the opposition and to do the best job you can do, you're also playing to keep your position, keep other players out of your position.
Yeah.
So naturally, you probably push yourself beyond your means from time to time, but that's probably what defines sometimes sort of a good professional to a very good or an excellent professional. It's the ability to back up performances week on week and be able to really push through the pain barrier, if anything, really. So yeah, that's what I've been trying to do the last few years. So I'm going okay so far, touch wood again.
Just touching on your career, Matt, what would you say is what was your lowest part of your career? Have you had any lows in your career?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of them. I think, God, yeah. I think rugby and pro sport in general probably seems to be quite glamorous, and there's definitely, like you say there, there's a lot of low points I can think of. So probably some of the serious injuries I've had along the way. So 2017 was probably my last one. I had to have shoulder surgery to reconstruct the labrum in my labrum, it's called, in my shoulder, which kind of controls the ball and socket and the shoulder staying in the joint. So I basically tore that playing in a game, had to have surgery to have it put right, and then the rehab process was sort of 8 to 10 weeks before I could get back playing again, which, again, on paper in the scheme of a whole career doesn't sound very much, but 8 to 10 weeks in the gym while everyone's going out playing every week is it's a massive low point. And obviously you're kind of paid to do your job, which is to go and play, and that's not only for the reason of being paid to do it, you do it because you're passionate about it. So when you're the guy stuck in the gym doing sort of like banded rotator cuff exercises like 4 times a day, every day, and all this other conditioning on the watt bike and on the rower because you can't run yet and you can't do any of your contact work, it's very frustrating. It's a very long, slow process, and a lot of guys struggle mentally massively from an injury perspective. It's one of the hardest things that probably people have to overcome in sport, because you want to be out there performing, and it's almost like you feel you're never forgotten about, because the lads are always so good at keeping you sort of on, like, chirped up and feeling like you're still part of the squad. But you can't help this feeling inside sometimes that you kind of just locked away in the gym, and while everyone's out there doing their thing, and headlines are what the headlines are in terms of you winning games or you losing games, you don't feel you're part of that, because you're not able to be on the pitch and be part of it. So I'd definitely say, yeah, there's been that moment with my shoulder, and a few other ones prior to that as well, where it's you feel helpless, and that's a horrible situation to be in. But we're very lucky in a team sport rather than an individual sport, which must be even worse, that we've got a lot of lads around us who have experienced the same hardships as that, and also know how to keep each other sort of pumped up and make you fully kind of confident that you're still a part of the whole process and the wider picture. So then when you eventually do come back in, it doesn't feel like you've just kind of been ignored for 10 weeks or 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Some guys, I've been lucky not to be out for a year plus, but some guys have injuries and they're out for an entire year. And it's kind of like, that's a long, long time to be indoors every day and just not be able to contribute to what we're trying to achieve as a collective.
Yeah. Mentally, though, that's hard, isn't it? Mental health is huge in sport. It's become more apparent now that people, especially footballers, all athletes are coming out with like mental health issues, and it's becoming more known in the game. So, in terms of like when you're going through like the injury process, you're on your own in the gym. Everyone else, all the rest of the team are out training. Do you get any like counselling or anything like that if you're really struggling mentally, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a players' body, which is called the RPA, the Rugby Players Association. So it's an external body to the club, but we as players all become members of it at the start of each season. It's kind of like almost like a renewal of membership while you're in the game. And basically each club has a rep from the RPA, and they basically are there for a multitude of things, really. They help players with their education and kind of job opportunities, work experience, all things like that, because obviously the time you have in the game is quite finite. You're probably lucky to get maybe anywhere between 12 to 15 years would be a really good amount of time. That's sort of you playing from your 20 years old to your mid-30s. Some guys, unfortunately, through injury or what other reason, get a lot less time than that in the game. So they're there to help people transition out of rugby and to kind of actually try and build a life that's not just solely based around something that won't last forever. In the same breath, they also are there to provide support from a mental health perspective. So they have contacts that we can use to be able to speak to people confidentially if you're feeling low, if you're feeling, obviously, even to one extreme, some guys experience in the past suicidal thoughts and things like that, which is perfectly sort of normal. A lot of people experience that, and I think particularly in pro sport, because you can make yourself feel so worthless through kind of, even if it can be injury, it can be through performing badly, if you're not getting selected. It's a lot of emotional highs and lows. So the RPA are really good in providing sort of different resources for players to use should you kind of be in that position where you do need that. We also have a sports psychologist who's employed by the club, who's in a few days a week, called Mike. He's a great guy, and he's basically there available whenever you want. You literally give him a call, give him a text, and he'll either call you or arrange a meeting with you. And again, he's just there to kind of help you kind of talk through your issues, anything that you're struggling with. And then equally, he's really good in terms of if you want to front foot things like that and actually develop strategies with you and processes to build kind of mental resilience, which I think is probably something that a lot of people overlook, and they just assume that they'll sort of bounce from, whether it's a rugby player bouncing from game to game, or it's a person in sort of the normal day-to-day life bouncing from job to job, or issue to issue. I think people just think, oh, I'll just deal with that. But you never know, one day one's going to hit you really hard, and you're not really going to know how to deal with that. So Mike's really good at working with those and building strategies around how we can build mental resilience and how we can sort of have a process in place that allows us to deal with those negative thoughts or deal with things that kind of potentially could come and knock you for six out of nowhere. So we are pretty lucky, with some of the sort of resources that are available to us.
That's awesome, yeah.
And is that something that is generally offered to, obviously you're in a Premiership club, so is that something that's offered to like lower league clubs as well, or is that across the board? You know, is that something that's offered, or is it just kind of to a kind of Premier team?
Yeah, I think it's probably something that unfortunately is probably more limited to kind of the top end of the spectrum. I think it's probably mainly just kind of like the financial resources that are available to these larger clubs, Premiership clubs, as opposed to lower levels. I mean, I actually did do a short stint when I was sort of on my way up in Tier 2, which is Championship level. And although you've got like guys that are fully professional there, and there's loads of great clubs with great people, they do probably lack resources in those types of areas. So it's very easy to kind of go to one of these clubs and be in a fully professional environment, where the demands that they go through physically and mentally are the same as what you get at the top tier, but then these resources I just discussed aren't in place. And it's such a shame that is the case, but it's so limited from like a financial perspective as soon as you drop literally one level that they're almost not in a position to have that support. And it's the same there with, I mentioned, with the RPA, which is obviously a kind of a players union that is developed for the players. There's been a few times where Premiership players have sort of campaigned or asked for those guys to be able to cover the Championship as well, and they equally have sort of said that they would struggle to do that financially, just again because of the cost of actually having a rep that's full-time employed to be in these clubs, and then all the associated work involved with that. And I suppose it just takes a lot. Like I say, unfortunately, it's coming down to money. And how do you put a price on mental health and kind of how the support you have in place? You can't really. But at the end of the day, these things start to be paid for. And unfortunately, it's probably just the isolated kind of top 12 teams in the country that benefit from that. And then unfortunately, outside of that, it's not really the case, which is a big shame.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just thinking, even like grassroots stuff, like you say, you're going through this stuff, and sometimes you might even just do it for fun and things like that, but you still have the same, things going through your mind. You still got the same things. You still you still live a personal life. You still, like you said before, you've got all those potential financial or personal issues, relationships, and all that kind of stuff that you have. So, it's a shame, isn't it? It's one of those things that, trying to spread the message of trying to say, look, let's try and help people out and try and do things. And it's good that some Premiership players are you're kind of reaching out and saying, look, try and reach out to that. But it is difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to kind of have them supported as well. There's so many people that need it. It's just, you can't support everyone, unfortunately. So, but one thing I was going to say was, what was your mentality during this whole COVID situation? I know that you kind of, I've went through the Instagram on London Irish. I saw that you did a day in the life. Saw your training regime and stuff. But I mean, what was it like? That whole thing where it's kind of just like all of a sudden you're in your routine and then bosh, stop. What was your mentality like then?
Yeah, I think it was an incredibly frustrating time. I think because particularly where we were in the season. So I think pre sort of COVID and lockdown, excuse me, we were actually probably on the up in terms of how our results were going, and we were actually on a bit of a roll in terms of our movement up the league as well. And we only had, I think it's 9 regular season games left to play, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's obviously 9 weeks worth of games with a couple of weeks gap in between that as well. So I think we probably, all in all, we had probably 11 or 12 weeks to go. So to have that kind of cut and just postponed out of nowhere, like you say, was a massive kind of rigmarole trying to just work out what was actually going to happen and what we should do, because we were sort of in limbo, especially in rugby in particular. You get a lot of guys who are from abroad who come over to play for the club because of the talent that is in kind of the Southern Hemisphere. Guys from across, even myself, I'm from the northwest of England, so when I'm bunkered down in London, obviously without sort of anywhere to go train because the club completely closed down, and we're kind of like, are we going back soon? Do we stay fit? Do we just kind of like, do we do our own thing? There's a lot of questions asked at that time, and it was completely just up in the air. And obviously it got to a point where the club did sort of turn around and go like, lads, the season's not going to resume anytime soon, clearly, with how bad it's getting. So everyone make your way home. As you said, you saw a video of me where I sort of did a day in life where I'd gone back up north, and I was probably really lucky with the setup I had up there, because being from sort of a relatively rural area where my family are from, myself and my partner went and stayed with them, and we had the luxury of having all the space and the kind of just general freedom around us that we probably wouldn't have been afforded in London, because obviously of how built up it was and how much stricter the lockdown was. So exactly, yeah. So to go up north and to have to be able to walk out of my back door and I'm kind of in fields of countryside, it was like, for me, was a massive kind of relief. It was kind of felt like I felt comfortable. Where I felt really sorry for everyone that was kind of stuck in probably situations where they were, say you're in a flat or you're in a house where you don't maybe have a back garden and things like that. And that's just geographically obviously very unfortunate that's the case, because when the lockdown happened, it was like, right, you're literally indoors for 8-12 weeks, however long it went on for, which was just, I think the amount of people that affected and friends I have that had that, and rugby players that I'm friends with who had that, and it just sounded absolutely awful. So from a personal note, I was really, really lucky, but yeah, equally it was very frustrating from a rugby perspective just to have it taken away from us. And then we literally restarted, I think it was 4 weeks ago. So we had pretty much 5 months fully off with no structured training, no kind of like indication when we restart. And in a rugby player's lifespan, that's quite a long time, because the max we usually get off in an off season sort of 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So by the time you get back into it, you kind of you've had enough time to refresh, but you're still kind of like in the zone of kind of like you've just come off the back of one season and you kind of roll straight into the next. To have such a large gap, it's been really hard for everyone to reacclimatize themselves to the intensity and the volume of training, plus the kind of physicality of the games and the training as well. And we've sort of seen that in how, you know, guys picking up injuries at knocks and things like that. So yeah, it's good to be back, but that was definitely, the COVID period was definitely kind of just, everything was up in the air. No one knew what was going on. So yeah.
Did you have like tailored programming from the team when you were at home?
Yeah. Yeah, we did. So it was kind of like, well, initially no, because we were all obviously kind of classed as furloughed, like everyone was. So it was kind of initially was just kind of like, you can manage yourselves, but you don't have to. Obviously, when you're on furlough, you don't have to do anything. But obviously, as professionals, we choose to do it because we don't want to go back in hideous shape. So
yeah, sure.
Which is a big thing and could easily have happened to a lot of us. All the offer. So yeah, like to begin with, it wasn't really that tailored. It was kind of just like, we all have individual needs in terms of, some guys are kind of gainers in terms of the mass they need to put on. Some guys are complete opposite and need to be losing weight and constantly stay on top of their fitness and how kind of their actual work capacity needs to increase. So we kind of planned our own stuff around our individual needs. As we got closer to coming back into the season, and we sort of restarted making contact with the strength and conditioning guys and also the coaches and stuff, we started to put more of a structured plan in place whereby everyone was kind of then singing off the same hymn sheet. But obviously it took a while to get to that point, because we didn't really know at that point whether it was going to be something that would happen over a period where we could come back in over kind of a period of a month or 2 months or 3 months. Like for the way it was going, obviously until the government turned around and said, "Oh, pro sport can resume," which was just on a random Friday It was the classic like Boris thing, wasn't it? Where it's like, go to work, don't go to work.
Yeah.
We had the exact same thing in rugby. We were like, well, go back to work, because you can't work from home, but you can't have contact, and you have to wash your hands, but you can touch each other. Like, it's nuts. And we still have loads of red tape in place at the moment, which feels bizarre because we're back playing games and we're back literally, obviously, like you can't possibly have any more contact with people than you do in a rugby game. Like yet all the protocols are still there, where in the changing room we have to sit 2 meters apart. We're not supposed to be high-fiving, hugging. We're not supposed to be talking in huddles for too long. And
that's mad, though, isn't it?
It's crazy. Like I
make a tackle in a game, and then
exactly. It makes, to me, like, it made sense to begin with, because we weren't allowed to have contact to begin with on the field. We were literally just doing, when we first came back, just fitness and like gym, which was in like really sectioned off areas of the gym. But then to then now be at a point where we are in full contact and we get tested regularly for COVID as well, every week, sometimes twice a week. to then be like, okay, go and play another team who are all COVID tested, you're all COVID tested, you're all free, go tackle each other, do what you want, but then when you come back in, stay 2 meters apart and social distance and all this. And it's just like, it's counterproductive. And I think at some point, someone's got to make a call and be like, right, this is just getting a bit stupid now. But I think obviously everyone's just, especially because this stuff all comes from the top down, and it's all about obviously like meeting the criteria of what the governing body want. It's easy for them to obviously just write all the paperwork up, right, this is the guidelines, send it to the clubs, and then we just have to deal with the aftermath of that as a playing staff and a squad, as a playing squad as well. Just like pick up the pieces almost and try and decipher all these things from all this paperwork, which is just a nightmare. So yeah, been stressful.
Given like the obviously the restrictions and stuff, I'm assuming you're still glad to be playing, like glad to be back in some sort of fashion where you can still do what you do every day.
Yeah, 100%. I think we went from, like I said, we went from literally zero to back to kind of like what we're doing now. Relatively quickly, to be honest. We had what was basically classed as like phases of engagement almost. So like phase one was kind of like we could come in and train, but we couldn't be near each other, so it was all done in tiny groups. And then phase two, we could build up the full team training. Phase three, we could go back to games. The time in which it took to get from phase one to back to games was actually surprisingly quick. We probably, from when we started training again to kind of playing a game, was probably only maybe like 7 or 8 weeks, which is pretty good compared to how slow some of the things are moving. And like I say, the process was relatively kind of like painful with all the guidelines you have to meet. But as you just alluded to there, you can't put a price on being able to go back to doing what you do, because I suppose it makes you as well not want to take things for granted, because when you're just playing week in, week out, like we were earlier in the season, you do probably just take it for granted a little bit. You kind of like, you're on a roll and you're in autopilot, you don't think about it. But then as soon as that's taken away, and for us, like, we're really lucky, like what we do is obviously our job, and it's physical and it's tough, but we're lucky to do something that ultimately we all got into because we actually enjoyed it in the first place. And then we do enjoy it when we play week to week as well. So I guess we had double whammy, because not only did our jobs get taken away, almost probably like what for most of us would be like our favourite hobby got taken away as well. So it was like double whack there. So yeah, so it's definitely good to be back doing what we're supposed to be doing more than anything.
Definitely.
Also, mate, you're looking forward to I'm looking forward to getting our pitch back at the Medeski. We're ready for that, so hopefully get to Brentford ASAP.
Yeah, exactly. Probably sick of the rugby players tearing that pitch apart. Yeah. In fact, we're actually homeless at the moment because of that. Because obviously all our games that we were supposed to play at the Majeski were supposed to finish like this summer just gone. But we're still playing out this season. But Brentford's not ready for us. The Majeski contract had ended. So now all our home games we're playing in Twickenham. Twickenham's which were Harlequins. So basically, like, even our home games and our away games, and our away games are our away games. So like all the games we're playing now, are just, like,
in all fairness, I bet you're glad just to get the season done, aren't you? Just get going.
I think it's definitely getting to that point like now where I think everyone's just ready for next year. I think the plan to play this season out, I would say, was entirely a commercial decision. It wasn't something that was taken probably with a view that it was going to be kind of like the best, most competitive rugby, because with the way the schedule's set up with kind of games like 3-4 days apart, you can never put your like best side out game on game on game. So it's not as competitive as what it previously was. Like I say, with the team when we played Saracens yesterday, we had to put out like a really young and some guys were playing their first ever Premiership games. Actually, half the squad were playing like their first Premiership start against and Sarries had done the opposite way, where they went sort of a weaker side last week and then ended up the way it turned out was stronger for us. So to have such young guys, such an experience coming in and playing at like literally Saracens make up like half the England team.
Yeah, I was going to say, what an experience for them though as well, which is great.
Amazing experience. And I think like that's basically the main positive you can take out of it, is that we're really blooding a lot of players now who will be the future of the club as we go on through the years. But yeah, it's like you say, because it's so hectic and because of all those changes, I think everyone's just ready to be like, right, I think 2020 full stop's ready to be wiped, isn't it? It's just like, so exactly the same with our season. We're ready for it to just move to the next one, and we can have a proper crack at it then, I think.
And Johnny alluded to at the start of the podcast, you've obviously looked at going into PT, and you're kind of exploring that, which I'm very interested in as well. So what's the next steps for you then, Matt?
So I think, for me, it sort of links back to what I said earlier about how we have the RPA, our association of players, who help us with our education and life outside of rugby. So one of the first things I actually did when I got into pro rugby was just sort of see what the extra work was I could do to kind of either advance my own skill set or create sort of something that I could do outside of rugby as well, because that's kind of important, I think, rather than just be rugby 24/7. Important to have something else that your mind can be put on and takes your mind away from it. It's a good mental refresher, but also gives you a bit of security outside of the rugby as well for if anything goes wrong. So one of the first things I did actually was do all my PT qualifications when I was straight out of uni, and I'd signed for Sale up in Manchester. To be honest, initially when I did them, it was probably actually more to kind of advance the CV a little bit, and also probably for my own benefit in terms of learning all the extra bits you learn for a PT qualification about the anatomy and the different styles of training. I'd never really at that point thought, oh, I'm actually going to put this into practice, but naturally sat on it for a couple of years. I've always sort of worked with people here and there who have, on an informal basis, who have obviously wanted to draw my experience from a high performance environment to try and actually help them develop, whether it's from a physical perspective or otherwise. And again, because I hadn't formalised that process, it was something that just sort of happened every now and then. But with the lockdown period and this last sort of 6 months where there's not really been a massive amount to kind of do other than train ourselves from a rugby player perspective, especially, we could stay fit, but there wasn't much kind of mental stimulation outside of that. I just felt it was quite a good time to try to formalise, kind of use qualifications and the previous experience I've got and the background I have in high performance sport to try and formalise that process and begin working with people in that respect. So it's something obviously I'm new to, and I'm basically looking to just kind of work with people and also continue learning along the way. The more people that I can engage with who are already in the industry, the more I'm going to develop and learn, which I'm keen to do. And equally, the more people I work with who are, I like the challenge of it, where people come in with queries and say, okay, I'm in this position, but I want to get to this position, whether that is improving the kind of like the weight, whether that's improving muscle mass, strength, all sorts of things that people come with, as Johnny will know. So those challenges are something that I'm embracing and really looking forward to working with more people sort of as I can over the time. And it's tough with a full-time rugby schedule to fit that in, but it's kind of also, like I said, it's a really good outlet for me to kind of have something else to focus on and think about. And ultimately, I'm a people person. I like talking to people, meeting new people. And I think ultimately, the more I can help people, the more everyone loves helping people at the heart of it, don't they? And that's what, for me personally, I really like the reward inside of it as well. People actually come back and go, yeah, I've really benefited from the work we've done together, or the insight you've given me into this, that, and the other. So yeah, it's probably something I'd probably look to grow, hopefully as time goes on, and it'll be a slow burner because obviously rugby's there where I have to give probably 95% of my focus to that. But if I can keep chipping away at this and keep hopefully building a bit of a client base and learning off others, then that's sort of where I hopefully want to take it going forward.
Definitely. And would it be something like to, go into, working on that sports professionals, that type of thing? Because, when I trained as a PT and did remedial sports massage and all that kind of stuff, and kind of looked at the rehabilitation side of things as well. So it's not only just looking at the kind of getting people fit and healthy, it's also looking at the rehabilitation side. So is that side of things, does that interest you, or is that, too early stages to say that?
Yeah, no, I'd say it definitely does. I think obviously I'm sort of in a position with it at the moment where, because obviously I'm playing rugby, you don't always fully know where it's going to take you. Obviously, you meet people along the way who, like yourself just mentioned there, could guide you into some of the more specialist areas. And that's something I'm definitely open to. I think particularly having obviously being in the environment I'm in at the moment, even if I wasn't in it from a playing perspective, I could potentially see myself in that environment in some other capacity as well. Like you say, whether that be kind of in the rehabilitation side of it or the strength and conditioning side of it. It's something that I'm probably quite passionate about, the fitness side of it anyway, which is obviously a facet of the sport I play. So I could definitely see myself kind of specialising potentially in one of those areas, and then hopefully potentially looking to stay in a high performance sport environment going forward. Doesn't necessarily have to be in rugby. It could potentially be in a multitude of sport, but
Yeah.
I like to think that hopefully what I've probably learned along the way from a playing perspective, while also being able to apply what I'm going to hopefully build up further in terms of training knowledge, will also complement that quite well. So yeah, it's definitely something I'd look into. I think when you've been in sport for a few years like I have, I think you realise what a great industry it is, and especially the people you come across. And it's for me, I think it'd be very a lot of people transition out of the sport and maybe go back to desk jobs or into finance or to whatever it is, and that's great. That's fine if people want to do that, but for me, that's not kind of where I want to head, and it's not really what I'm interested in. So yeah, definitely, like you say, looking down some of the routes you mentioned would be of interest for sure.
A lot of the time, and you know, I mean, I've come out of the fitness industry now. I've gone that way into a desk job, but I've but the you know, I do the supercars every day, so it's not too bad. But it's the thing is that, you know, it depends on what you're interested in and what motivates you and that type of thing as well. And the thing is, the fitness industry is really not that big, you know, and the same thing with the sporting industry, as I'm sure you can testify for, Matt, is that, you know, it's just all about networking. It's just getting yourself out there, saying, this is my passion, just like you say, learning off other people, you know, and just saying, right, you know, what can I learn off you? What little snippets can I take from this person, that person? Then that just makes you into the trainer you want to be, you know? So that's great. That's really
100%. Like you say, I think knowledge is power, isn't it? And I don't think that you can ever stop learning. I think even the most experienced trainers in the world, regardless of what field they're in, whether they're doing it on a private basis, doing it in team sports or whatever, like there would be no one who put their hand up at that level and go, oh yeah, I know everything that there is, or I am exactly where I want to be. Like, there's always so much different research coming out, so many new different ways of doing things, and it's kind of like you can't ever really stop learning in that respect. So that's probably the side of it I really enjoy at the moment, probably like doing a lot of, even if I'm not actively working with people at all times, because my schedule can't dictate it, if it allows me to read up on things or to kind of have an eye on things from afar, just to help me advance my knowledge and develop kind of the trainer or the person that I want to be going forward. And that's always something that's positive for me. And it might be a slow burner, but it actually allows me to slowly make strides, which is great, because then you're developing as a person in general, really, which is what I want to do. So. Yeah.
Matt, I've got 3 questions for you, mate. Let's go back to your rugby.
Mm-hmm.
I've got three questions for you. Who is the best player you've ever played with in your career?
Wow, good question. Who's the best player I've ever played with? Good question.
You got to pick someone in the squad now, surely.
Yeah,
you know, if they hear this, they're going to be like, what?
Be careful if they listen to this, they'll be like, sorry.
That's why I'm worried about who I pick now at this point. I'll probably offend someone else. That's such a hard one, because so many different people, many different features that make them the best. And there's never like one.
Choose like a top 3 then, just
Very
to make
diplomatic
it even.
Yeah, exactly. Too diplomatic, probably. So, I mean, I'd probably stick with the guys that I probably played with at Irish to date, because some of them who've come through there have been pretty awesome, to be honest.
Top 3.
So a guy who recently left us, who's actually just gone to play in Wales now, Stephen Myler, who was our fly half last year, and he was also here up until this point of COVID. He's obviously now left because he's now got a contract in Wales. But I always found Stevie was probably one of the best people at reading the game that I've ever seen, and controlled it so well. Never sort of the guy to do anything that's like outstandingly flash, but just like really well. Used to just boss the guys. Everyone knew where they stood. He was very clear, very concise, really good communicator. So yeah, Steve Miles probably up there with one of the ones. Come from a rugby league background, actually, so I don't know if that's part of the reason that he read the game so well. He played cross code, so he would be up there. I'd say another one's actually probably like probably one of them is a younger guy who I think he's going to be up there with one of the best players that's going to be around. He's called Ben Loader, who is Irish as well. His brother actually plays for Reading, or did play for Reading, Danny Loader.
Was supporter, I think, Danny Loader.
Yes, yeah, he has, yeah. So Benny, yeah, if he stays fit, because he's had a couple of injuries and stuff, but if he stays fit and when he's on his money on the day, he's like pretty unplayable. He's absolutely rapid and very, very good finisher and a great player. And I think like he'll definitely be in the mix. He's only young still, like early 20s, very early 20s, come through the academy, and I think he's going to be probably my up and coming player for like could be in the England squad in the next few years. And I think could make big strides. He's well and truly tipped to go all the way in that respect. So yeah, although like probably like still got a way to go in his development, he's still sort of got to kick on a bit, but like he will definitely be up there. I'll give you 2, so that'll have to do.
No, that's good. No, that's spot on. Absolutely spot on.
And lastly, your best game you've ever played in?
Best game I've ever played in? Oh, wow. That's hard as well. To be honest, like, there's been a couple that would have gone in years gone by, but actually my favourites probably actually come this year when we beat Harlequins at Harlequins this year in the Prem. Just because obviously I've only been at the club a few years, but Harlequins and London Irish got quite a long-standing kind of like West London rivalry. Yeah. We went and played Quins at Quins this year with basically kind of like really good squad out, to be fair, but like naturally like Quins are a good side and we probably were the underdogs a little bit. We went and played them on a Friday night. It was absolutely tipping down, probably like the worst conditions I've ever played in. And they still packed out the stadium. There's probably like 20,000 people there watching. And we probably just put on one of our performances of the year and beat them like relatively convincingly. I scored the opening try, so that's quite memorable for me personally. And then we just went from strength to strength and won that game. And that's probably my favourite game today, just because of the rivalry that it was within London, and also what it meant afterwards. The amount of people, fans and stuff, had just messaged me saying like, I wouldn't care if we like lost any other game other than that all year. I was so desperate to win that game, especially because of the rivalry amongst the fans. So yeah, that's probably my favourite game, particularly from this year. Definitely.
Fantastic.
Nice. Really good, mate. Really good. Right, Matt, I think we've taken enough of your time, and no, honestly, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being so open and honest with us about your journey and where you're going so far, and we wish you the best of luck for that going forward, both in your rugby professional career and also, with the PT side of things. And if you need any advice or support or whatever, then reach out, mate. We're happy to help you out, and if we can. But yeah, appreciate your time, mate, and thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for obviously the input today, and we'll see you next week, everyone. See you later. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Thank you for listening, and thank you again to Matt for being so open and honest about his journey and career so far. Yet again, Let's Talk has had another incredible guest onto the show to talk about their inspiring journey, and please check out the other episodes. Matt, it was a pleasure to have you on the show this week, and wish you and everyone at London Irish all the best for the rest of the season. Each and every week we'll be having more incredible guests onto the show, so please stay tuned. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and we'll see you next week. Take care.